So, here we are.
We're Television Skies, and this is our interview with FLIMP magazine. Just want to say thank you for having us. We're excited to get into this.
Big FLIMP fans.
Yeah. That was 2011 or 12.
Yeah, I think you met him before I did. You met him
Okay, so I met him in that must have been May of 2011.
I think you met him, the first time you met him was at the Grammys, right? Or after the Grammys?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was, it was a Grammys after party, I think.
Yeah.
So, that was,
Was that
I just remember you telling me about it. I just remember, because I wasn't there, and I just remember.
And you weren't, you didn't know his work. I mean, you did, but you didn't know it was his work necessarily at the time. Right. So it was really cool to sort of learn a little about that.
It was.
We had no idea what was coming up after that.
It was the weirdest thing was that I was on the East Coast, so I was on East Coast time, and you were texting me. You were obviously in California, and you were texting me from this after party, and it's like, I mean, I don't know what time it was. I was asleep, but you were texting me. I woke up to like this string of texts being like, Steve Rubin is across the room. I just saw Steve Rubin. The next text would be like,
I didn't expect.
And Steve Rubin's talking to me. Steve Rubin just shook my hand. You're giving me like live updates on. He's like, Steve Rubin is eating a pig in a blanket. I don't even know.
I was out of my mind. I can't even. I was so excited. Yeah, no, I mean, that's like, that guy's responsible for most of my childhood memories, I want to say. At least listening to music and that, which is most of it. Like, without him, I don't know.
I don't know if he ever knew, because I never told him when we were working together about these texts. And
now he's going to see this and he's
like,
wow, these
Steve
guys.
Rubin's in a corner drinking champagne. Oh my God. It was like, it's like a 7-year-old,
Yeah.
It's nuts.
But so then we introduced,
Yeah, I met him, it was, I think, because that was 2011.
I met him 2011, May.
And then I don't think I met him until 2013.
Really?
It was...
must have been like early then.
Yeah, it was casual. It was, we were at the same... we actually... It was funny because we found out afterwards that we shopped at the same Whole Foods. And, like, I would see him in Whole Foods all the time, and I didn't have... Like, I'm so bad at remembering what people look like. I know when I see a face, I'm like, I know who that is, but I'm, like, so bad at, like, knowing who they are and remembering names. I would see him in Whole Foods all the time. And just, like, he said I handed him some quinoa one time. And I was like, maybe.
I never heard about that.
And, but in 2013, like, all before that, I'd been, like, we'd been going to Whole Foods all the time. But, yeah, I met him in 2013. I was doing a session, and he wasn't producing the session, but he came in. He was friends with the producer who was putting that record together, and he came in just to shoot the shit and see what was going on, because he was hanging around the studio because he was working on. He was working on. I don't know if. Well, they put that record out. I think he was working on. He was working on a Misfits album at the time. Their like reunion album, and he came in. And he popped his head in the studio, and I was like,
"Didn't
that's the guy."
me.
That's the guy from Whole Foods, and that's when I knew him. I was like,
he recognized him.
I was like, "Hey man, how's it going?" But I didn't know who he was. I don't know. He didn't recognize me. I was just like, I could see him through the glass of the booth, and I was like, that guy's at Whole Foods all the time. Like, I see that dude every other day, and so they called me back to the booth, and I went back there to get some coffee, and he was hanging around, so we got introduced and chatted for a little bit. But no, up until we really got to know him, he was just kind of this mystical figure that that we both kind of crossed paths with, but never really had a tight cohesion with until recently when we worked with him, which was just pretty cool synchronicity there, I think. So.
Yeah. All that was our first album. That was way back then. That was the first album. So it's been a while, and I mean there've been a few albums since then, and now it's sort of full circle to kind of come back and get to work with, because we were able to hang out with him a few more times at the time, but we never actually worked with him until recently, which is sort of...
Yeah, and it's weird because you pick that person, that kind of person, when you meet that, once you know who they are, and then you're like, this is Steve Rubin, and then you start to see them around. You start to end up in the same places. You know a lot of the same people, so you run into each other. And this whole time we're thinking, like, how do we get this dude's secrets? Like, how do we convince him to tell us, like, as much as we can possibly get without being those guys? Because we're always afraid of that. We're always aware of, like, this guy's gonna hate us.
even after working, and you get close with people when you work on it. I mean, it's like you kind of go into a bunker with these people for like a month, and you're just working all the time, and so you get really close with them. But even still, like, he's still, as much as he is a friend and I love the guy, he's like also this crazy, huge, legendary sort of figure in my head because of everything he's done.
Yeah.
I mean, he started way back. I think the first project he worked on was like 1955, I think, or something.
Yeah, well, he was young at the time. He had like a gold record in 1957.
And he was like 23 or 22
he was like,
or some
he was
shit.
not even 25, and he had his first gold record and was producing.
He's even younger than that. I don't know.
That was amazing. Just such a staple,
right?
Such an OG, And
cool.
I don't know if he would like being called that, but that's 100% what he is. So that was pretty amazing.
Well, like I said, I grew up listening to all of that, classic rock and roll. Yeah. Late 50s and 60s kind of like rock and roll stuff. I grew up on that, and he is responsible for pretty much all the good stuff as far as I can tell, and so it's really sort of feels like he's a bit of like an uncle or something. It feels like he's related to me somehow. Like, I look up to that guy, even if I didn't know him personally. I feel like that I've had that feeling for a long time.
Well, and his music really brings us together in that I listen to the same stuff that you did growing up, pretty much. With a few exceptions, but pretty much the same things we listened to. But I never really delved into the back end of who produced stuff, and I knew who was in the band. That was about it.
Right. Once you start really getting into the music of the music world, it's like you really start to learn who...
See his name everywhere.
Yeah. And at first it's like, oh, Gene Vincent or Eddie Cochran or whoever, but then you start you start learning more. You dive deeper. You learn about who was actually on that record, who played the bass, who played the accordion or the fucking washboard or something.
Right.
But his name is everywhere.
Yeah,
all the stuff. I was like, damn, I like that. Who produced it?
Steve Rubin. The crazy thing is, like, once you start to learn about, he'd be working on an Elton John record, and
right.
Everyone, they'd all go home for the night, and he'd be in the studio, and the next morning they'd come in and he put down the backing vocal, the rough backing vocal for like Candle in the
legendary
Wind. Legendary kind of stuff that was.
And
like,
people don't know that.
Right.
They think they have all these other sort of stories about that, but he's the guy. He's the guy, and you just never knew, like, and that's something we always joked about. Was like, we're gonna come back tomorrow, and the song's gonna be done because he's gonna have written the rest of it.
Yeah, he'll have written the song at that point, but No, I was listening to the same stuff.
The thing is, when he does that, you gotta just go with it.
You can't.
You don't really fight him on that.
You can't really do anything about that. But when I started to find out from you, once we started to kind of talk about music at a young age, you would mention him, and then I started to see, and so that kind of brought us together, and then I learned a lot about him later in my life, and thanks to you, because it was just sort of, I was listening to the music, but I wasn't aware of his presence and involvement with it. So he sort of brought us together in that way as well, which is pretty cool. So his history for us runs pretty deep.
Yeah,
that's made it even more special. Right away.
Yeah.
Right away. Once I found out, I mean, you must have known, when you were 5 years old, but as soon as I started to realize just how much of the music I loved, that he had done that, I was like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
And it was not even like,
you sort of can't go wrong.
And it's not even like, I'd love to have, him produce my music. It's more like, you gotta. You want to be on this level, and you want to hang with the really great artists of, the last 3 generations. You got to have his name on the back of your record. There's no other.
As soon as it became sort of a real possibility, we were like, there was no stopping that from happening. As long as we could, con him into doing it for us.
Once we both met him, it was just like, at least once a week we would just sit and daydream about someday.
Someday. We couldn't stop talking about it. And actually, the day that he came into the studio that time, I was doing these guitar parts, and I don't think we got one good take after that. I was freaking out the whole time. I fucked every single part up.
It's a good thing it was late in the day.
Yeah, we got most of the rest.
We had most of the stuff done, because if he had showed up like 2 hours earlier, that record would have taken a lot longer. We might have gotten fired.
Yeah,
we probably wouldn't have kept our jobs, because we were we didn't make great representations of musicians after that happened. So. You name it.
I mean, we're talking albums or art. I mean, he's worked with everyone. Like I said, Gene Vincent, Eddie Cochran, Chuck Berry. He actually worked on Sgt. Pepper. He's not credited as the producer.
They never put his name on it.
But he did help with that album. I mean,
a lot of the early Eagles stuff, he was responsible for.
That's the thing. Like for me, I grew up with like the earliest sort of the rock and roll stuff, so I always think about him as being sort of a golden era, kind of producer. But then you look later, and he was producing fucking Journey and Def Leppard in the 80s,
and his name's on the back of Run DMC albums, and
he goes all over. It's crazy.
It's like the guy was on the cutting edge of hip hop in the 90s. It's like
legend.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
He was pulling no-name rappers out of the South, out of Georgia, and he went down. I think he told me this one story that he went down to, I think it was like 1989 or 1988, and he said that he had just got done doing a Def Leppard album in England, and he said he was like, I had to get away from this kind of big city music vibe, and he went down to like southern Georgia, like right on the Georgia-Florida border, and just went with like a notebook and some clothes, and just went and like looked for unknown rappers to produce. Like when hip hop was like barely even a thing yet.
Not on the radio.
Yeah,
for sure.
he was down in the South looking for new hip hop artists, and
that's the thing with him. Like he's got this sort of insane, like he changes things up constantly all the time. Like even if something's really working, he's doing great. He's doing like what Paul just said with Def Leppard or something. He was doing that for, he was producing them for multiple years, and that worked out really well. But then he's like, this is good. I'm gonna go somewhere completely random to like change everything up and do something completely different in a genre that is, nobody's talking about right now. And look where hip hop is at.
Not only that no one's talking about, but is the people who are talking about it is with disdain. He didn't care about what that might mean. No, he didn't care that he was a rock and roll producer. Right. He was a music producer, and if it was good, he wanted to be a part of it, and he wanted to make it better. He wanted to help artists grow. He was just looking for people that he thought were talented and hardworking and had something special. And
that's why he's not just like a great producer. He's just sort of a legendary man at the same time. Like just as a guy, he completely broke down so many barriers in like through music history, through the history of the sort of evolution. He was always the one right at the front of the change, whatever that was in the sort of pop culture mainstream music.
Changed the way that people think about genres. That somehow you're defined and limited by a certain genre or set of genres, and he was like, I'm not even. I don't even care what.
And look where where it's at now. People don't give a shit now. About genre.
It doesn't matter. It's just if it's good, and he was doing that. He's been doing that for 50 years,
right?
More. He's had that mindset his whole life, and that's truly just unique. Nobody like that. Hard, cold sometimes. Amazing, friendly, loving, brutal.
Yeah, you feel a lot of
pressure was on.
You feel a lot of pressure. I mean, especially, because he's sort of this idol, and he knows what he's doing, and he's done so many great things that you feel like you could never possibly live up to the you're I think for like the first 2 weeks I was constantly like doubting myself. I'd make a decision or I'd make a choice musically or lyrically or whatever, and I was scared to like bring it up because I'm like this couldn't possibly be a good idea.
We couldn't.
But you learn to trust because at the end of the day, the song comes out brilliantly, and you get a good product. He makes a really good fucking album, and it doesn't really matter how you feel going through it. It's like you're gonna get something good at the end.
There was something he said, probably 2.5, 3 weeks into working in the studio, because we came in with a bunch of the songs written already, and we had some ideas as to what we wanted the overall sort of concept to be, but we just couldn't get anything to work for those first like almost 3 weeks. Like you said, we just couldn't. We were so nervous and so so pressured to just be perfect.
We got good stuff out. We did make good stuff. It was a lot harder.
The
process was harder.
But it was hard to put stuff together. We felt a lot of pressure there, and he kind of took me aside at one point and he just said, "Listen, you guys are here. We're in the studio, and it doesn't matter who you think you are. It doesn't matter if you think you're good enough. He said, you're here, and we have all the time that it's going to take. If it's not working, we'll pause and we'll try do something else, and we'll try something different, and we'll come back to it. It's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it exactly right every time. It's about feeling it when we're putting on that performance and we're recording that performance. And he just told me, look, go out there and do what you guys have been doing for for so many years. You've been doing this. I've seen you do this before.
Something that kind of resonated was when he said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he kind of reaffirmed this this thing that he's working with us to work with us. He doesn't expect us to go and be somebody else he's worked with who we look up to. He wants to work with us because of what we do. And if we just continue doing what we do, we continue, being who we are, the record's going to be great.
That changed everything.
That really changed everything because we kind of realized we could relax a little bit and it didn't have to be like,
Well, it settled me down. It cleared my mind of all the nonsense of having to worry. It's just now we're here and we've done it all before. All we have to do is hit record. Right. It's not any different than anything else we've ever done. Only there's a third member of the band here who's really gonna help us take it to the next level. And as long as we do what we've done, he'll do what he's always done, and it's just gonna be that much better because of it. And I think we just from there out we were just ready to go. I mean, from there it was like a song a day almost.
Stops out.
We just banged it out. It was incredible. We never worked that fast.
Yeah.
Since then. Yeah. So. Yeah. People have asked this before. There's always, you can always point at this or that and say, oh, they weren't getting along, or this is going to hurt. The art suffered because they weren't getting along. But Pink Floyd, they hated each other for most of the time, and the albums that they put out were incredible, and the art never suffered because they didn't get along. First of all, right. So
I feel like I mean you could say that's a true, I suppose, rumor. It's a true rumor. It's really hard to make something and aim for that thing to be the best thing in the world and not disagree sometimes. I mean, we never hated each other. That's ridiculous, but we certainly had to work things out.
Yeah. Well,
but whatever that, we heard about the
well, some of it wasn't even true. I mean,
well, that's the thing. You read those things and it's like that's it's laughable sometimes. It really is. It's but you could say it's sort of true because you can't make this kind of album, especially with Steve Rubin, and it's not going to be smooth sailing the whole time.
Well, and you go in there expecting you expect curveballs and you expect personalities, and it's part of it. And we'll leave it to TMZ to write about what may or may not have happened, and right. What may or may not have, and most of it, they people think that you said this and then it escalates. You get one little thing and 12 people whisper it to each other, and by the time you get to the end, it's not even close. So it was never nearly as bad as I think people might have thought it was. And
right. The thing about the chair through the glass, for example, I don't know if you've read that one, but that's completely not true. That's ridiculous.
No, it was a stool.
Well,
first of all.
Yeah. I don't think anything like that's ever happened in a Steve Rubin studio. Personally, just working with him, that doesn't fly. No
he's a bit of an enforcer as well. Like he doesn't.
Right, yeah.
There were times when things got a little bit hotter than maybe they should have. But I think thanks to him too, there was a lot of reasoning and discussion over stuff that could have escalated, and he's known for that. He's worked with a lot of artists that
crazier than us.
Crazier and with more tension and more personality than we could ever have, and they did just fine. Excuse me. So I don't think there's any reason to delve into that too deeply at this point.
All right, so here's what happened. Okay.
This is kind of a similar question.
Yeah. So we were in the middle of recording. What song was that? I don't remember which one. We were working on like 3 or 4 at a time within that. That was like the 2 weeks where we were
wrapping everything up at that
right.
point.
I don't know exactly what it was, but who?
Well, so we were at a point where everything was kind of. We were putting the finishing, not really the finishing touches, not the masters, but we were really wrapping up a lot of things that we had started in those first couple weeks that we had gotten stuck on. Once we finished a whole bunch of songs, we came back to those and found a lot of inspiration. We were wrapping the whole thing up, and we kept, we'd be working probably till 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and we'd get done late at night, and we'd go with Steve, and the night wasn't over at that point. We'd go across the street to the diner that was open 24 hours, and we would sit in a booth in that diner and talk about, what we'd done that day, what we still had to do, and it was just nonstop. It was 24/7 thinking about it, and every time we'd go and sit in that booth over that terrible coffee they had, and we'd go back and forth about the songs we were finishing and what was left to do. And I think at first we kind of all felt it, but Steve really said it when he said, "There's something missing. There's one piece. We don't have the number one yet. We don't have that killer single that is going to get everyone to listen to this record." And we sort of knew it, but being having a lot less experience, we just kind of were like, we're not going to be able to identify that anyway. But he was like, "No,
we
it's
had
not
started.
there."
We had started recording. I think we were in the middle of recording "Anything Goes," and that was like we had done. We didn't have the bridge in there, and we were missing something in the verses or something. Like it had been started, but
it was an idea. Yeah,
it was an idea, and we were recording that at the time. And I think that was the day. I don't know exactly. I don't remember what time it was. But I remember T.I. came into the studio. That was, first of all, really...
That was insane.
That was insane. But he walks in, right, and he says, "You know what this is missing? You need some kind of, like... You need some insane, like, fire rap or whatever, on this. Like, that's gonna..." And Steve was all about that. And he was like, "Yo, let me call up Jem. I'm gonna get him. He's gonna sound perfect on this, right?" So T.I. gets his phone, and he calls him straight from the studio.
Yeah.
And I'm not even kidding. He puts him on speakerphone, and he's like, "Yeah, apparently, he was in Bermuda on a boat somewhere. I don't even know."
Yeah, he had to call his manager.
Right.
And his manager put us through to his sat phone out in like the middle of the Atlantic, which was crazy.
So we had at that point, I think we had like 2 days left to wrap up the album. We had a deadline.
Yeah, we were under a lot of pressure from the record company.
And we had this one. I think we also had one more track, that still had to be finished. But with Anything Goes, it was like we had 2 days to get Gemstone up from wherever the fuck he was in the Atlantic Ocean, to into the studio, because he didn't want him to do it remotely. He didn't want him to do it at his studio.
And he'd never heard the song before.
He never heard it.
No idea.
He came in. Like, it must have been...
It's probably 2, 3 in the morning.
He agreed to do it. He had to, like, he took a plane, like, or a helicopter... Was it a I don't even know.
He, like, took a boat to a landing spot, there's some oil rig, where they could land a helicopter. And they put him on this helicopter and flew him... The helicopter was... They couldn't get a big enough helicopter, so they had to take him by helicopter to somewhere in South Carolina or Georgia where they could put him on a plane because he'll only fly
Secret,
he'll only fly on, we can't say what company he'll fly with, but it's a private company and he'll only fly with them with this one pilot because the dude is terrified of flying. So we had to get his pilot the pilot was like on vacation somewhere with his wife, and we had to like pull his pilot off of vacation.
At that point, I was starting to feel bad. I was like, this is
we're like way too much work. But he was like, his pilot was like all
and
about
Steve,
it.
Steve was convinced. He was like,
right. He knew and he's worked with him before, so he knew exactly what we were getting into, and he was like, no, we got it. Whatever it takes, we got to get him here. And so finally, like I think it was like 24 hours and maybe 18 hours, and he was on location, and he walks in the door, and we'd all been up all night. We were like, how are we gonna do we need to write lyrics for him? Do we, how are we gonna set this up so that he can walk in the door? Because literally he's got to walk in the door.
This has to go out for mastering by 5 p.m. I think it must have been 3:30.
Yeah, he's got to walk in the door, cut the track. We got to print it. I mean, print it as far as digital goes, but we've got to print it and get it to the label for mastering. Literally that day, because the label, we'd already gotten like 2 extra days from the label, and they were like, listen, if you don't get it here by 5 o'clock tonight, the door is literally going to be locked, and you're fucked at that point. Right. You don't even want to know what happens when you piss them off.
He got there at 3:30.
Yeah, he walked.
I think he listened to it one time through. He didn't even listen to the whole thing. He was like, "All right, I got it. Cool. Started again." He did his 16 bars. Like, he wrote like a couple notes down. I don't know. I didn't. I was just trying to like shut up and let the guy work. And he wrote a few things down on a piece of paper, and like, I think what you hear on the track. Anything goes. I think that's like 2 takes. Yeah, 2 takes. With some magic from Steve Rubin.
The second take, he didn't like the way he said the word "where."
Yeah,
like he listened back to it. It was like, it's great. And then we were like, do you want to do a second take just to have? He's like, no, I already did it once. I already did it. And he's like, and he listened to it and he was like, I don't like the way I said that word. And he just literally, it wasn't even a take. He just went in and said like those 3 words. He literally cut in that line, and Steve cut it in, and we had it out. And it was like, and literally, as soon as he started to roll on it, as soon as we hit record, it was like, we kind of looked at each other and just like,
oh, it was,
we knew. It was kind of this, because sitting in the diner across the street, we were like, we kind of looked at each other when Steve said that, and we were like, it was kind of like this crushing moment of like, we still need, how are we going to get this done? And we kind of looked at each other, and it was this tremendous weight. And then we looked at each other in the studio, and it was all gone. And we were just like, we've got it. This is it. This is the one. And then to have it go number 1, really solidified that. We knew that it was something special just because of all the pieces that had to fall into place to do it, but to have the rest of the world sort of get behind it like that was way more.
And all the rumors, the stuff about the delays and all that, somehow I don't know what happened, but somehow as soon as we kind of agreed that we were going to try to get him, as soon as that happened, somehow that got out. I'm not sure who said something to who, but
and people say things about Jem, and we only worked with him on that, but he's a friend now, 100%.
Yeah,
he's a really, really great artist, a great talent, a great guy, and everything about working with him. I mean, we loved every minute of it.
Yeah, and literally, half an hour after he did his take, he sat around, for half an hour. I think that's as long as he could stand. He got out of there and was back on his boat like 6 hours later.
Yeah, he went right back. We literally were like, anything you need.
I was like, you
deserve
man,
I just got to get out of here.
And go on.
I think a lot of it comes from just people just don't get him. I think people misunderstand his process and his approach to art. and the way he approaches his business and his profession and his passion, because he really is passionate. He's the most.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
He's.
And
probably
you can see that. You
right.
can see that as soon as he starts rapping. You know. It's like,
When he walks in, when he's the kind of guy when he walks in the room, you know shit just got serious. You know, he's just got that presence and that aura of the best of the best. And he knows it. And the people who hate on him are just jealous because they know it too. And they know that he could be the greatest there ever was. And he's got all the confidence in the world in that. And if you don't like it, it doesn't matter, because the dude's on his boat in the middle of the Atlantic, and he don't care. He can hop on a plane anytime he wants and fly to LA and record this with us. And
and we're super grateful. So like
anything.
Jem, thank you.
Yeah,
You're watching.
He has yet to invite us out to the boat.
Yeah.
He might still be just a little bit. It's a bit of a touchy subject. Every once in a while we talk to him on the phone every once in a while, and he's always in a different place, and I want to see the boat personally. I'm just curious because I've heard a lot about it, and you hear rumors, you see pictures, but I'm always like, Jem, when we gonna get to come out there?
Yeah.
And he always gets a little bit touchy. I think he's still just a little bit sore that we pulled him away from whatever he was doing, which must have been real important. But we appreciate him taking the time, and we're gonna.
I heard actually he's writing a book, which is like, I cannot wait to read that. That's gonna be
crazy. Did he tell you about how he's writing it? He's writing it all backwards.
Of course he is.
Yeah, he's writing it all in reverse.
That's why him and Steve Rubin work well together, because they come from the same planet, wherever that is.
Whatever spacecraft crashed in Nevada in 1957 that Steve Rubin walked off of, he must have come off of that one too. But he must age slower. That must be the thing.
Right.
Because he still looks pretty good.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks,
we're at Television Skies. We had a great time.
Great time here at FLIMP.
Talking about that, and
please go listen to the album.
Listen to the album. It's coming out on November 17th.
Yep. All platforms. Remember, you can pre-save it now.
Pre-save it. So links wherever. Swipe up. All that stuff.
Keep an eye out for Gemstone's book.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gemstone.
Subscribe to FLIMP.
Right. Check out FLIMP, guys. Thanks.